2019 is finally over, and it's a good time to reflect on Disney's biggest year ever. The company grossed $11 billion at the box office last year, which makes it the biggest year for any Hollywood studio in history. And what makes it all the more terrifying is that they actually surpassed the record in July, and have only been extending it since then. Throughout the year, 7 of their movies grossed more than $1 billion. That's another Hollywood record, and all this doesn't even include movies from Fox, which Disney bought earlier this year. Now, Fox has only been a disappointment in 2019, but if we include its movies, Disney's grossed $13 billion in 2019. With numbers so big, it's easy to cry monopoly. That's been the theme of 2019. But the truth is, last year was an outlier. Numbers like Disney's will never happen again, even at Disney. See, as you would expect, Disney's big year was made possible by a ton of popular movies across all of its divisions. Disney Animation, Disney Live Action, Pixar, Marvel, and Lucasfilm all released one or more billion-dollar movies in 2019. Now, these divisions usually release annually anyway, so it may not seem like a big deal that they were active in 2019. But what made 2019 special was that the movies each of these divisions released were events. They were either the final installment in a long-running series, or remakes of past blockbusters. Basically, they were movies that aren't repeatable anytime soon, if ever. And thanks to the company changing its focus to the streaming game with Disney+, Disney itself probably won't be too concerned with topping itself at the box office either. In any case, let's take a look at Disney's $11 billion year and lay out exactly why it won't happen again. Now, note that Rise of Skywalker didn't reach $1 billion solely in 2019, but for argument's sake, it's still included here. The main theme of Disney's 2019 was finality. Avengers Endgame, Toy Story 4, and Rise of Skywalker are the end of their respective story arcs. Endgame made almost $3 billion, and is the highest grossing movie ever. It ended the Infinity Saga, which started back in 2008. That's 11 years of build-up to one climactic end. Not exactly something that can happen every year or two. For example, next year's Marvel releases are Black Widow and The Eternals. Neither look to be billion-dollar mega hits, even though I'm sure they'll be successful in their own right. And looking at Marvel's future schedule, it doesn't look like there's anything else that could possibly approach what the Infinity Saga was doing. At least in the next few years. The focus on Disney Plus will also mean a lot of the Marvel must-sees will be there instead. The MCU releases 2 to 3 movies every year, but none of their upcoming installments are Avengers-level events. The feats of Endgame will not be repeated for a long time, if ever. Toy Story 4 was another billion-dollar powerhouse this year, following Toy Story 3, which did the same in 2010. The franchise is a reliable draw at the box office, but Toy Story 4 is supposed to be the last one. Yeah, I know number 3 was supposed to be the last as well, but come on, there was 11 years between 2 and 3, and 9 years between 3 and 4. Even if Toy Story 5 ever happens, it'll be many years from now. Of course, Pixar isn't only Toy Story, but they're moving away from sequels for the time being. Next year they have 2 original movies, and box office success is not guaranteed. Moving on to Star Wars, Rise of Skywalker is the last movie in the Skywalker saga. Looking at the numbers, the sequel trilogy peaked with Force Awakens. The Last Jedi grossed way less, and it's looking like Rise of Skywalker will gross even less than that. I'm no hardcore Star Wars fan, but when you take the declining numbers of the sequel trilogy, and the mediocre performance of Solo in 2018, it's clear that the franchise has seen better days. I believe Disney's seen that as well, and they're taking a break from theatrical Star Wars releases to focus on TV shows. And even when the franchise returns to theaters, there won't be the years of hype that fueled the sequel trilogy in the first place. Aladdin and Lion King were two hugely successful remakes. Not just any remakes either. They were remakes of Disney's two biggest animated movies of the Renaissance. Everyone has seen the original Aladdin and Lion King. It's no wonder that decades later, the remakes get so much attention. I know the reason I went to see them was pure nostalgia and curiosity with the Lion King. Still, even though live-action remakes seem to be guaranteed successes these days, those two movies are pretty much the only big remakes left in Disney's remake schedule. I just can't see any of their future releases grossing too much, let alone having two of them in 1 year. While there's possibly Cruella, I do see that one being a huge success. But beyond that, most of them are based on smaller properties, honestly. Frozen 2 comes 6 years after the original Frozen, and it's already surpassed it at the box office. This is Disney's biggest animated movie, and they rarely do theatrical sequels in the first place, so I'm sure the sequel was only made because of demand. Knowing Disney's aversion to theatrical sequels, I don't think we'll see Frozen 3 for quite a while, if ever. But if it does get made, I know it can repeat the success of 1 and 2. It's just going to be a long time from now. It's definitely a repeatable feat though. Captain Marvel is the only original movie on this list, and I use original very lightly. I don't think an MCU film can count as original at this point, but it is the character's first appearance, so I'm sticking to it. Being part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe guarantees a movie's success, but Captain Marvel did gross $1 billion right out of the gate, so it seems to be a very special property. Like I said before, I don't believe every MCU movie is going to be $1 billion mega hit. They haven't announced Captain Marvel 2 yet, so I do believe this is a repeatable feat, but not for a few years. I might be starting to sound like a broken record with all this not for a few years stuff, but my point with all this is not that these franchises won't be successful again. It's more that it's sheer coincidence that all these movies released in the same year in the first place. It's like a cinematic planetary alignment. For one reason or another, each major franchise featured in 2019 will either take a long break or focus on different, less iconic characters. The live-action remakes, I believe, have hit their peak because of their very nature of being reliant on past successes. And lastly, both Pixar and Disney Animation will go back to original movies next year, which will translate into lower numbers. And even outside of the content itself, there's other factors at play here. The whole market is declining with every year, so as time goes on, it's going to be harder and harder to repeat the success. And though we can expect Disney to be a major box office player for years to come, their focus is moving to Disney Plus for the moment. This means movies that would have come out in theaters will be streamed instead, and resources will be shifted to accommodate. Disney's 2019 was a milestone year for the company, one that excellently showed off what the company could do ahead of the release of Disney Plus. They showed off their full arsenal of franchises and received around $11 billion for their trouble. With all these panicky news stories going around, it's tempting to look at Disney as invincible. But as we've seen, the historic success of this year was mainly due to excellent timing and corporate cohesion between subsidiaries. Given that, I believe 2019 will go down as the biggest year a studio has ever had, and likely ever will. I believe 2019 was an exception. But what do you think? Do you think Disney, or any other studio, will ever reach these numbers again? I'd love to hear what you have to say. In the meantime, if you liked what you saw, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel for more Disney videos. Well, that's all I have for now. Be sure and have a great day, and I'll see you later.